What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Beast for Build. In today's episode, we're going to be cleaning, repairing, a little bit of carbon fibering even, and cutting. If all goes well, we will have the replacement rear frame section welded onto the car by the end of the episode. Stay tuned. But before we get down to work, I want to thank today's sponsor. This episode is brought to you by Squarespace. Squarespace gives people a powerful and beautiful online platform that you can use to create your website. It's an all-in-one platform, so there's never anything to install, never anything to upgrade or patch. You know it's always going to work when you jump on there, and like I said before, it's going to work everywhere you go. Squarespace has award-winning design templates that you get started with, so you can create a beautiful website or online store, anything that you need to make, starting with these awesome all-in-one cross-browser compatible templates. And it's an incredibly flexible and versatile platform. So whatever you need to make, it can handle it. So if you're a musician, you want to put your music online, you can do that. If you're a restaurant owner and you want to share your hours and your location, it's great for that. My mom runs her business website using Squarespace, and I have iPhone app websites that I use Squarespace for as well. It's amazing. It works for everything. So you have no more excuses now. If it's time to build your website, go to the link at the top of my description or go to squarespace.com/BeAsForBuild, and that'll get you a free trial and 10% off your first order. All right, let's get down to work. Cleaned the shop just yesterday and parts are already accumulating everywhere. Our bench is almost full again. But we got all of our stuff kind of out of the Raptor and unloaded. We've got some good carbon fiber stuff right here as well. Some LS engine mounts to start working with and a bunch of fun Lamborghini parts. I can't wait to mock up the interior and see kind of what we have and what we don't have. Today I want to put a lot of effort into this rear bulkhead section here. I'd love to have this looking a little bit better. It's not going to look too fantastic, but we need to start on the repairs of it, and then we also need to clean up a lot of this metal section, so that's what we're going to get started on. Got the driver's side a little bit more cleaned up. I took off a lot of the carbon fiber that just looked like it was never gonna find a home again. The game plan is that we're gonna go ahead and resin this down later today, and then after that's dried up nice and hard, we'll sand off anything that isn't playing ball, and then we'll recoat this all in carbon again to do the reinforcement, to basically build it back up, to make sure it's nice and strong. Really, its job right here, especially here and there, is just as a firewall, but it is somewhat structural. I'm finding out more that there is actually aluminum that runs all the way through this thing. You can see it right here as it goes in through there. So that's pretty cool. One other thing that I found out that was pretty cool, so we got all the wiring, all the junk out of this passenger side, driver's side, sorry. We have the only thing that's left is the brake line over here, runs to our rear caliper, and then we have this line that was going into our fuel pumps. Now, I didn't even think about this, but these are probably aftermarket fuel pumps. They're made by AEM, and it totally spaced my mind, but yes, this was a turbo car, and oftentimes, you know, turbo car, you're gonna want more power, more fuel for the added boost and everything else like that. So anyways, then when we trace that wire back up to here, it goes to this thermal circuit breaker, so that's pretty interesting. Just a giant ass fuse, and then it runs to this super heavy gauge wire. This is not stock Lamborghini, and then that wire runs along the floor right through here and through the firewall back around to the front of the vehicle. So that was an interesting finding. Maybe we'll play off of their lead when it comes to installing ours, or maybe not. We'll see what's clever. But I'm going to definitely leave that because it's a nice clean connection into the top of the fuel pump hat and all that good stuff. So next I'm going to step over to the passenger side and start cleaning up all this stuff. We're going to have to document and then remove all the junk wiring, the rear trunk hatch pop mechanism, and a lot of this other stuff. Got to get it all cleaned out. All right, we've got this thing completely stripped down. It's ready for its final cleanup before we start to cut. We're waiting for Oscar to get here. Then we're going to decide where we're going to do our cut marks, and then we'll clean and cut. And we're going to need to cut the other frame as well, but we'll get into that when we get into that. I've also been poking around a lot at these wires and looking at how they're doing things, and it's kind of how you would expect. They tapped into the stock harness fuel pump power wires to flip a relay, and then once the relay opens up, it sends power through this thing all the way to the pumps. And that's brought up something that I wanted to ask you guys as the viewers. If anybody knows how to get the wiring diagrams for this car, Lamborghini Huracan, this is a 2015 coupe. I would love to be able to kind of trace some of these wires through and figure out what's going where. As an example, inside this burnt up mess right here, there are some good wires. If I trace them back, you know, I can salvage the wire, and these wires lead to things like inside our fuel pump, the reading for how much fuel level we have and stuff like that, which would be great to maintain. But to do that, I need to know what color those wires are and things like that. So if anybody knows how you can get that documentation, please email me, or just email me a copy of those documents. That'd be fantastic. If you work at Lamborghini and just want to do it secretly, I won't tell, I promise. All right, we got Oscar back. You guys remember Oscar from the Datsun build. He's a professional welder, fabricator, all that great stuff. And he's gonna be helping us on all this tricky stuff on the build. Well, and just on everything with the build. He knows a bunch about motors, engines, all sorts of great stuff. So we've decided that our cut lines are gonna be right here where the factory took these two pieces and welded them together. So it's a nice line that we can match up on both sides, the good frame and the bad frame. We'll be able to cut that off clean. And then it gets a little bit more tricky over here where we have a damaged piece here, we have a complete piece over there. We got to make a cut that's very precise so the other frame matches exactly up. But with a little bit of measuring, it really won't be that hard. And then we're going to weld them together here. Interesting thing, rather than using the TIG welder, since these were all done with a spool gun, we're actually going to try using a spool gun today for the aluminum. I think it'll be a little bit better in the long run. So what we're going to do right now is we're testing the type of aluminum. So Oscar's got the old Porter band. We're going to cut off the junk right now and then dig into it and make sure that we have the right type of filler rod for it. Oscar busted out a quick, just a little practice weld to make sure we're just doing this for metal compatibility. So we used a 4043 filler, and it's compatible with at least this part. This is where we cut it off to test it. So next, we're gonna go ahead and measure and find exactly where our cut line is, and then Oscar's gonna start doing some cutting on this and the frame outside. And meanwhile, while he's doing that, I'm gonna start cutting this off of right here, and then we're gonna come in and do a little bit closer cut. But also we wanna clean everything up before we do that. Got this seam all cleaned up and we're ready to go ahead and cut along the seam on both sides. This is just the stock paint, so that's all good. And this one, actually, you can see this is the paint, that's the stock paint, and then it's just like got a little bit of soot on top of it. So we're only gonna clean it back so far. I don't wanna have to rip everything off for no reason. But the big part is the seam. Have to have completely perfectly clean aluminum if we wanna weld it correctly. Next step is going to take a long time. This is going to be a lot of cut-off wheel work to get right along this seam all the way around. And this is like a pocket that slipped over here, so we got to try and cut it off and take it off as a pocket. Okay, we got this side of the frame cut and ready for the pocket to slide in here. So the pocket piece from the other side of the frame actually goes into here and here and here. It's pretty cool. So these are cut and sanded. We're gonna go ahead and clean it the rest of the way up and wipe it down with acetone before we weld. Let's go ahead and catch up with Oscar outside. Oscar just finished up on the rest of the frame, so you can see these are the parts that kind of slide in to what we are building on the other side, and then this is all cut and cleaned up as well. So now it's time to go ahead and move this into the shop and start lining it up. Okay, so we did some cleanup over here, and then we've offered up the rear section and the front, and it's all fitting really, really nice. You can see how it's just got like a pocket, and it's in and then around. The only problem is that Oscar purposely, we left these a little bit long, because if we're too short, big problem. A little bit long, not a problem. So we're going to trim just a little bit more off, and that's going to allow us to get in here to bolt up here and here, and that's how we're going to know we got the right length. You probably saw us running around like maniacs with measuring tapes, but this is a very, very important part to measure. So we measured square and length and everything to make sure that we have the right distance everywhere. We did have to actually pull this thing completely off and do a little bit more trimming, but now it's ready to be welded in. So Oscar's gonna come in here. We're gonna use, like I said, an aluminum spool gun. That's a new tool here in the shop, and we're gonna, weld around there. We'll square those up and weld those. All that's got to get welded, and then we're going to come back in and we'll reinforce it. All right, you guys, we have got a frame. We've replaced the frame in one day. I'm so stoked on this. This is a huge milestone, and it's so cool that it's happened so early on in this build. So the spool gun worked fantastically. Oscar went ahead and welded up the seam all the way through, and then we have that nice kind of pocketing action, and he welded it up right here as well. So it's fantastic. And the next time that Oscar's here, not in the next episode, but the next time Oscar's here, we're gonna do he said we do like a diamond shaped thing like this that we're gonna weld in to do as some supports here and there, just to double it up. The reason being is we're throwing about double the horsepower that came in this car at it as well. So I want to go ahead and just reinforce those joints. It's not going to hurt, and it really won't take more than like an hour. So this is huge. This is huge. I'm so excited. We measured this thing till it was like dead nuts square on every corner and everything, and it welded in perfectly. I'm so stoked. Don't pay attention to what's going on over there. That's for tomorrow's episode, guys. So real quick, just before we call it, I don't like having these exposed carbon fibers around. They're bad. You don't want to get them in your lungs. It's just not good stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and wipe a little bit of this down with some wax and grease remover, clean it up real nice, and then I'm going to grab and mix up some resin that we're going to be using on our carbon fiber panels that we make, and I'm just going to resin all this stuff down so it'll be nice and coated and won't kick up any more fibers into the air as we're working around in this area. And then that'll be kind of the first step to us repairing this thing as we go on. Alright, that coat of resin really got everything back down to flat, and the game plan for that is I think once it dries, then I can come back and sand any of the roughness off, and then we're going to be recoating with carbon to make sure that we have a nice thick enough layer of carbon fiber there to do the job of the firewall. All right, guys, that is a wrap. What a huge milestone having a frame on there is. It makes me feel like so good about the progress that we're already getting to. And as you guys saw, we kind of already like skipped ahead in a weird way and got an engine and I'll give you a hint, it's not going great, but you know how this goes. We are always gonna come out on top. So we're back at that tomorrow. And that'll be in the next episode, our junkyard journey of getting an LS engine for this thing. So please tune in for that. Please remember to subscribe if you're gonna enjoy this build. No, wait, if you do enjoy this build, because you will enjoy it one way or another. Hey, I'll see you guys sooner than later.